So yeah, the only kind of formal education I have wasn't in filmmaking, or at least there was no film theory or kind of narrative structure or kind of how to use this shot to get that sort of emotion or to give that sort of feeling. That's not what my education was about. It was more as a technician. So somebody who understood how broadcast media worked, how a television actually worked, how a camera actually worked. It was very focused on that aspect of it. It was set up there was one version of the course in Bristol and one in Durham. So kind of throughout the 70s, 80s and 90s in the UK, lots of people had gone through university learning to be movie directors or writer-directors. So, and especially in the 90s, you had loads of people inspired by Scorsese and Tarantino, and they wanted to go and do that. But you can't there's no jobs for 2,000 writers and directors coming out of universities, but that's all they'd been trained to do. So when they would go down to London or go to Berlin or Paris or to New York and try and get jobs, it was like, can you do a digibeta tape transfer in a machine room? Can you run a patch cable from this sound desk to this edit suite? Nah. But they knew all about how to get an actor to emote, which was completely useless for any job in the industry. So most of the jobs in the media, in the broadcast media, are in television. So the big focus here was to be able to grab a camera, quickly go and film something as if you were doing it for local news, and then put together, edit something very quickly at high quality, good enough to go out on Sky News or BBC News. We also learned how to work in TV studios, how to read a studio lighting diagram, a microphone diagram, because TV studios, it might be the Graham Norton show one week, but then the next day they might be filming 3 episodes of a game show. So they have to completely change the studio space. So they need technicians who can come in and switch the studio around. But what I enjoyed the most was post-production. Like I loved editing and anything to do with that, and that's what I really got into. I didn't like going out and filming things in the north of England. I wasn't that into documentaries. I was into kind of music videos, and my father was an artist and my sister was an artist, so there was different people around at the time who were doing really, really cool stuff in the late 90s. Some of you were here when I did my music video presentation. So at the time, I was massively into Chris Cunningham, Spike Jonze, and Michel Gondry. They were like me big three who their music videos I loved. And I'm like from a working class background, so I wasn't going to have the backing of my parents. So I knew when I came out of university, I had to make money. I couldn't have like 5 or 10 years living off mummy and daddy. So I had to work. And I thought music videos is something that lots of people are going to need, and I might be able to make a living in some way editing music videos for people. So instead of focusing on me work, I started making music videos because we had cameras at university, had access to edit suites. So at first I started making music videos, and then I just started making experimental videos. And I would show them to people and they'd be like, that's cool, that's really cool. What is it? What's it for? What's it meant to be? And I was like, it's just meant to look cool. Like there's no more thought behind it than that. And it was when, this was like, what year was it? Like 2002, 2003. So kind of Final Cut on the Mac had just taken like a big leap in terms of video effects that you could use and color correction. It had just taken a big jump, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Unless someone's really interested, then I can talk more.
When it came to your job, how much say did you get in, I get to edit music videos, or
when I went, after I left university, it depended. In most cases, very, very little. And most of my career, I was not an editor. I was a machine room assistant or an editor's assistant, which is a big step away. It's like being a third AD rather than the director. It's a big step away from like that actual position. But to work your way up to that, you just have to stick around long enough and get lucky. So one day someone will come in and there's no other editor there, and you hopefully say, I can do it. And someone gives you the chance. And I met people who had incredible stories about stuff that they'd worked on. Ask me about that later, otherwise I'll never get to the next slide. So then I'd made all these weird music videos and just weird art videos, although I didn't know what like installation video art was then, but I was making it. But a woman who ran the edit suites in the university, she used to watch me stuff and she said, you should send it to John Moores University. Like you might be able to get onto their master's course. So I sent it to them, and it was the year that they'd just won the European Capital of Culture. So they were giving out like scholarships. And the only qualifying thing was that you had to come from a working class neighborhood, and it was just based on your postcode. There was no other kind of assessment done. It was just like, what postcode were you born in? And you told them, and they were like, oh, you must have had a tough life. Like, and it really wasn't that bad. It makes it sound like fucking Oliver Twist. But no, so I went and did that, and then I just focused on making weird music videos and doing like old school camera tricks, like reverse photography and stuff like that. And I can show some of that stuff at the end. So my final piece was a piece of interactive installation art, but it was incredibly hard to set up. It was so much work, and it made us not want to like go into that area, because it's like, if it's hard to make any money out of filmmaking, it's even harder to make it out of video installation art. So I just kind of walked away from it. But it still has a special place in my heart. So then I finished my master's degree, and I immediately moved to London and got a job working for a company that made like light entertainment. So it was literally just the first person that would hire me. I just sent out applications to everyone, and then literally walked the streets of Soho. And every post-production company I walked past, I just knocked on the door and I was like, I've got a bachelor's degree and a master's, I'd like a job. Here's my CV, here's a DVD with some of my work. And some of them were just kind of like, just hang on to that, give it to the next guy because we're not hiring. And then there was one who was literally just like, took us to the machine room and he said, okay, like connect, we've got 6 edit suites, and this is with sound deck, and this is with tape deck. Can you connect this sound deck and this tape deck to this edit suite? And I plugged it together, and he was like, okay, you can start tomorrow. And he was like, this is all you'll be doing. And it was, so I would do as many hours there as I could, and that was open 24/7. It never closed. So they rented out the place in 12-hour blocks, and anyone could hire it, and that's how it worked. And then at the same time, I worked for Monkey Kingdom Productions, and they made a show called The Charlotte Church Show. Anyone heard of Charlotte Church? She was a singer who was very popular in the early 2000s for about 4 or 5 years, and then she disappeared. But she had a chat show, and the best I can describe it was like the Graham Norton show, only the guests were shit. The guests were like much, much worse. It was like someone from a soap opera or a footballer or something. But they made a kind of very exploitative documentary series as well. That was kind of fun to work on, but nothing that I'm particularly proud of. And that was called The House of ... documentary series. And they would get people who had different phobias. So it started off with The House of Agrophobics. and then they went to the house of arachnophobics and the house of whatever, like phobic. And each episode, they would just get 4 people who had this phobia and move them into a household together and then do a fly-on-the-wall documentary about them. And it was just like the shittest television you've ever seen. But that one really gives a taste of what it was like to work on a long production with a team and understand where you had to fit into the team. And that was what I realized. That's what the university course that I did, that's what it was really doing. It was telling you how to like work in the industry as it really is, rather than just like teaching you how to be a great cameraman and then sending you out with all these camera work skills, but not understanding how you have to fit into the production process. So then I worked on that, and then the company where I got the job from walking in off the street, that was called True Media. And they, again, would edit anything anybody wanted. They would, and they would do any part of the editing process. So they would cut down rushes. So if you take Top Gear as an example, do you guys know what, like, if I said like a shooting ratio, would you know what that was? So on like a feature film, the shooting ratio is usually 5:1, or that's what you aim for. So for every 1 minute of actual footage for the movie, you have to actually film 5 minutes. And then for factual television, it's longer. It's like for every 20 minutes that you film, you end up with 1 minute of actual TV show. So Top Gear at the time was a really big show. It was a massive, massive series. It was shown in like, I think, well over 100 countries. And series 8, 9, 10, 11 were kind of the peak of it. So they started to get more and more ambitious and go and film more and more things with bigger and bigger crews. And the cameras were just constantly rolling. So they would come back, and if they'd like been driving a car around for 5 hours, they'd been filming it with like 10 cameras. And so their shooting ratio, like I remember there was one tape and it said 300+1, and then there was one that said 500+1, and then they ended up just putting a line /1. So it was just like, we don't even fucking know or care anymore. We've just got a lot of footage. So because of the amount of footage they had, back then you had to literally, like, I mean, you still kind of have to do that now. It's just easier because it's digital. But back then it was all shot on like mini DV tape, and you couldn't just log and capture the entire tape. It would take up too much storage space. So what you had to do was sit as an editor's assistant and scan through the tape, and you would get to a certain point and you'd be like, okay, this looks like something. This looks like something they might be able to use. And then you would mark that out and then continue. And then when you'd marked all the timestamps of the bits that you wanted to maybe use, you would then log and capture it and digitize it and have it on the hard drive. And that was my job. So that's why it's kind of like I worked on Top Gear. But it wasn't like, we're filming in exotic locations. And I certainly wasn't the editor. It was more like I said to the editor, here's a bunch of footage that you might want to use. And then when we actually watched the episode, it would be like, oh, that's something that I picked. That was like as close as you could really get.
One of the few people in the world that have seen so much footage of Top Gear.
Yeah.
So that's an achievement.
Yeah. But it was, yeah, it was just, I mean, it's funny because the Silent Witness, when I picked out that and I found a full episode on YouTube, I can't remember which episode it was, but it was one from series 10. I was scanning through the episode and I was like, I can't remember any of this. Like, I can't remember a single part of it. And then I came to that one scene and then I was like, oh shit, I did work on this. I remember it. And it was because me and the guy I was sat with were making fun of how bad it was and like how bad the acting was, and just kind of like, Jesus Christ, how is this like such a big show? and it was massive, and that was the one little bit I could remember. But on that one, I did have a few more. I got to do a bit of sound mixing on it and stuff. So after they'd picked the music, I was able to like fade it in at the right point and balance it and stuff like that. Tim Burton directed a Killers music video called Bones. So that was edited in Soho because it had been filmed at Shepperton Studios. And I was the one in the building at the time. So I was kind of like, oh, can I do that one? And everyone else was kind of like, yeah. Like, and I didn't get to meet Tim Burton. Like, he walked into the room once because someone was like, get Tim to come and check something. And I was like, Tim's coming? And he literally like came into the room and kind of like went, nah, and just walked right back out. Just like looked at the screen on the edit suite and was just kind of like, nah, fucking Tim Burton. Like as soon as he walked out of the room, I was like, yes.
How does he have control over the final edit? Are you editing two storyboards or something? Is it?
So that was a bit special, that one, because it was inspired by Jason and the Argonauts.
Okay.
Do you know the stop frame animation?
Yeah.
So what they did, like that bit on the beach where they pull the skin off, and then there was the bit at like a drive-in movie theatre. Like, so the bit at the drive-in movie theatre, they didn't just film that bit for the music video, they did a whole performance. And then they did it from another angle, and then another angle. So then they had like the whole song, if they wanted, could be made up of drive-in movie theatre bits. And then the bit with that model, I don't know if you recognise that. I think she was in Sin City as well. She was
Fast and Furious.
yeah, she was like quite big for quite a while. But they basically filmed like a short little movie with them, like meeting up, then in a car, then on the beach, and then just did a bunch of stuff with CGI skeletons. So they just made like blocks of stuff. And then what he did was he just put like everything that they had on a timeline and just marked the beats in the song. So like chorus starts, chorus ends, like this happens, guitar solo. And then they just picked different bits like from everything that was usable, that was in time with the music. And I wasn't there for that bit. Yeah.
You were as editor on all those projects, right? Or like assistant editor?
Assistant editor. Like I was never, so I was like sound mixer on Voodoo Lagoon, Silent Witness and Dark Corners. Like, so I was doing the final sound mix, but I was never like the editor, like on any of this stuff. Like,
So you're not responsible for that guy's emphasis on the word problem. My wife has a terrible nightmare problem.
What's interesting about that is like that was Dark Corners. If you watch the trailer for that on YouTube, it's got the worst ADR, that additional voice recording, where they need to re-record the voices, and it's really stark how like that's not him speaking, that's somebody speaking into a microphone at a different time in a different room. If you focus on that, it's terrible.
It was really off in the beginning.
Yeah, like it's almost out of sync as well. Like Voodoo Lagoon, no, I've so bad it might have actually been deleted from film history. Yes, well, a co-Australian production. So it had a couple of like people from Home and Away in it. So they decided that they had to go to an island in the Bahamas somewhere to film it. And I think they had 6 weeks to film, and for the first 3 weeks they were all just getting drunk. They just didn't work properly at all. And then they quickly tried to get down to work and start doing stuff, and they came back to the UK and were kind of like, yeah, we've got it. Here's the script, here's the footage. And there was about 30 pages of the script that they hadn't managed to film. So there was just a huge chunk of it missing. So it was meant to go to Cannes Film Festival, I think, the same year that Dark Corners went to it. And we shouldn't have bothered going there with that either, because that was a bag of shit. Like, but yeah, the movie that won that year was The Wind That Shakes the Barley, which, if you've not seen it, it's an absolutely remarkable film about Irish history. And I remember reading what it was about and then knowing what I had on a digibeta tape, just going like, fucking I want to go home. But yeah, but that one, like I couldn't find a clip of it. I could only, and there's nothing about it. There's nowhere you can order it or buy it, but the full movie is on YouTube, dubbed into German. And it looks like a bad dub as well.
It's on IMDb though.
It is on IMDb, and my name's connected to it as well.
Is it?
Yeah, yeah. I
2.8.
think I'm listed as sound editor or mixer or something. But it just I think they had a budget of like £5 million, like 5 million sterling, and they did not get a penny back from it. And it was a great experience, to be honest. Vodafone. So all this other stuff, right? Like 50% of my hours that I wrote and that I like invoiced were for Vodafone. All this other stuff was like a side project. Before the financial crisis, there was three big industries that were paying for everything. That was mobile phones, banking, and car insurance. So kind of every TV show was heavily sponsored by these companies. So a lot of what we did for Vodafone was just repackaging like long adverts into, you know, you'll sometimes say like a long version of an advert and a short version. And then they've got to put on, like, Vodafone was at the time was in like, probably still is in like 300 countries. So then you get like the dialogue recorded by, like London's amazing for having such an international group of people. So you can get anybody who speaks any language in any dialect within like an hour, and they'll turn up and record like a bit of voice for you. So we did loads of work with that. We also did loads of DVD menus, because that was still a big thing. So loads of old British TV shows, loads of old British movies, and European ones that were only available on VHS or just weren't available. They were all getting repackaged for DVD. But you had to have a menu, and you had to have a play button, and you had to have a chapter menu. You had to have chapters. So I used to do that as well. Like, and it was honestly like the reason I put the Vodafone's ones in there, because they were really like good quality, you know, like it was just a shame it was just a Vodafone advert, but like it really did pay me bills.
Maybe I didn't catch it. What did you do at Vodafone?
So it was
What was your work?
it was at True Media, the post-production company I worked for, and Vodafone were just one of the clients
Yeah, for their
for their adverts. But like, no, it's a good question. So like, if they had a big corporate party, like they would film that and then get us to edit it.
Oh yeah.
So like corporate videos as well. We used to do all kinds for them, like Christmas videos, like a message to the employees from the CEO. Thanks for all your hard work, guys. Another fine year. And then at Soho Images, I worked there for, it says 2007 to 2008. It was probably like November to February. But that was like that was the coolest place. That was the place I really wanted to work, because they were still working on with 35mm, and a bit like one of the other slides I'll show you, they had like real like heritage. So all the stuff that Kubrick made that was shot in the UK, a lot of it was graded, color graded at Soho Images. And one of the guys he was an inspiration to me, but at the same time, he was the reason I kind of quit. Like the reason I decided I didn't want to work in post-production anymore. Because he had this story of in the late 70s, early 80s, It was like lunchtime, and Kubrick and Kubrick's DOP, director of photography, walked into Soho Images and said, like, we've got like some cans of film and we need them graded, and here's the instructions and we want you to do it right now. And he was like, oh, everyone's gone to lunch. And he was like, can you do it? And he was like, yeah, I'll do it then. And so he took the first one, washed the film, graded it, like probably, I don't know, 2.5, 3 hours later, I came out and he looked at it and he was like, okay, that's great. You can do the whole thing. Like, what's your name? And took his name, wrote down the address. And then this guy's first credit for grading film was Full Metal Jacket. Like, and that's how he got the job. The guy's name was Nigel Horn. And off the back of that, he worked on like just loads of amazing shit, just tons of like fantastic projects, one after another. But in between projects, he used to work in a call center for Apple and for Microsoft. And like his biggest payday was earning maybe 1,500 quid a week. So when I met him, I think he was in his mid-late 50s, and he was living in a ex-council flat in Holborn in London. But his CV was like some of the coolest movies. Like, you thought like, oh, whoever was the editor on this one must be like a millionaire living in like a Hollywood mansion. It's not the case. Like, he was like, and like, yeah, when we would like go and have a drink together, he would have said like, you know, he would have made more money being teaching this stuff than doing it. Like, if he'd gone and worked in a university, like he would have like earned more money in his career than actually working with it. And that was one of the reasons I was kind of like, and this is the sort of stuff I was doing. It wasn't for that long a period, you know. But it was around that time I decided to move to Norway because, like, after the financial crisis didn't affect me that much, but London really changed and the industry changed quite a lot. Like, there just wasn't the same money in advertising, and that's what was paying for loads of stuff. So then, but yeah, these were some of the studios I worked in. Shepperton Studios, Abbey Road, and Soho Images. So again, it was kind of like they all have these great legacies and are really, really famous, but like anybody can hire them to film anything. So Shepperton Studios, it's like, I think Space Odyssey 2001, the original 007 movies, the James Bond movies, Blade Runner, you know, they've like a fantastic heritage, but at the same time, QVC and phone sex lines, like, you know, the equivalent of, what's the modern equivalent?
Some sort of dating app or something, would it be?
Nah, OnlyFans.
Ah, there you go.
It was like early 2000s OnlyFans. But yeah, it was like, and then they would have talk shows as well, like in the same studios, because it is just a space that anyone can rent. And Abbey Road, when you sometimes hear bands and musicians saying like, oh, this was recorded at Abbey Road, and it's kind of all you need to book the Pink Floyd studio, and the $2,000 a day, and you have an in-room engineer and a sound booth engineer for £2,000 per day, and anybody can go and book that. So as well as like really cool bands and Foley sounds and voiceovers and choirs and soundtracks, movie scores, you also just have like a bunch of lads that have saved up some money to record their punk pop band. And Soho Images studio. So some of you who are like very into editing would have, I wish I could have done like a bigger presentation on the sort of stuff that went on there, because they would do I'll talk about it a little bit later on, but I wish I could have found images of the machines that they used, and especially some of the Silicon Graphics machines from the 90s, which are just kind of funny looking desktop PCs. They're not that special. But have you seen, you've probably seen images of when people used to have actually, like to cut film, to like find the correct part that they want. Well, they would sometimes grade one piece of film and then take a copy of it and then grade it differently. And then they would have two physical copies of the same film. And what they would then do is blend it in a special machine. So they would put the film on top of each other, shine a light through it, and then take a new copy of those images, either physically or digitally. And that at the time was kind of like a really hard job. And it was hard to get trained to do it, to get the opportunity to use those machines because there were so few of them in the world. And now it's a lost art. Like no one would ever grade film like that anymore.
What did you work in Abbey Road?
Abbey Road, it was a few different things. So Studio One's just like, it's just a huge room. There's nothing special about it. But
I've been there only from the outside.
yeah, it's honestly, it's not like, I think it's the same as Shepperton Studios. You're kind of so excited and then you get there and the first couple of hours are like, wow, cool. And then after a little while, you're just kind of like, it's just a mixing desk.
Yeah.
It's just a room. It's just a window. Like it's nothing, you know, if I've rubbed the wall, I won't turn into John Lennon or anything, or like, it's kind of, it's just a place. But no, they recorded Foley sound there in some of the side rooms, and two bands that I wanted to make music videos for worked there. So I was there under the premise of helping them, like set up their equipment and stuff.
Did you come here for a job or
No.
like how did
I came, my wife was from here and we're both, so as well as like working on like these TV shows and stuff, I had like other jobs in between and then one of them, it was an in-between job and then it slowly became just me job. And I stopped chasing projects in film and television, stopped trying to like work with bands to make music videos. I just couldn't be bothered after like a very short period of time because the effort involved versus the reward just wasn't there.
And how your schedule did look like in England, like in terms of the number of hours you've been working?
It was like, I mean, I would say at one point I could work as much or as little as I wanted at any time of day.
Yeah.
And I didn't have children. I lived fairly centrally. So it was just like, yeah, I would easily think nothing of doing a 16-hour day, either at one place or a combination of places. But that's why I was there. And that's what everybody else was doing. So it was nothing special. It wasn't like I was working harder than anyone else. Like that's just how London was. And probably still is. Like, but no, when we moved here, it was a quick decision. I remember it was my birthday and my wife was like, oh, there's a job on Rennesøy where I'm from. Like, would you fancy moving to Norway next year? And I was just kind of like, yeah, fuck this. Like, yeah, let's do that. And it was just like an adventure. And it wasn't like, there was no plan. It was just kind of like, yeah, let's move there. So we went and visited in the January and bought an apartment and put everything that I had for sale up in England. And then, yeah, just started talking to people, started networking and got a job on this movie, Rottenhytte, where I was a set builder and kind of like an on-set assistant, but I wasn't like a set manager or location manager. I was an extra in that as well. So I worked 2 weeks as an extra in the background in Rottenhytte. And then Nokas, I was a location scout. So we couldn't, I think for some scenes they couldn't use the inside of the police station because we tried that first and they were like, it's a 24-hour police station. Like they were like, we can't stop for that terrible thing that happened for you to make. So I basically went around to other, you know, I was location scouting. What I was actually doing was going to empty offices and walking around with a video camera, taking it back to the director and saying, could this place be the inside of a police station? So I did that for like about a month, and then I helped out on everything that's filmed outside. I was just like a set assistant, almost like a runner, really. But I had like a little bit more responsibility than that. Like, but it wasn't like a film job. It was like organising stuff. Like, but I wasn't doing anything special technical on set. And then,
These are films shot in Stavanger.
yeah,
Like in this region.
yeah. So, Rottenet, that was a movie by a guy from who made Mongoland, which is like a big Norwegian movie. Knockas was probably like the biggest Norwegian movie that year. Like, I think it was like a big deal when it came out and was well received, but it was remarkably short. It was like, I think it was only like an hour or so long, but I just remember it was like a very, very short movie. It was pretty good though. If you've seen Elephant, is it Elephant, the school shooting movie? It's heavily influenced by that. So it's like if Gus Van Sant had made a bank robbery movie instead of making Elephant, it would have been like Knockas. And the style and everything is just a knockoff of Van Sant.
It's 87 minutes.
Is it?
How many?
Erik Skjold-Bayek something. That's it.
Yeah, but is that the director's name?
Yeah.
I think it's the same director that did in like the Norwegian version of Insomnia.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Insomnia.
yeah.
Norwegian version of Insomnia.
Yeah, do you know the Al Pacino and Robin Williams movie? That was a remake of one of this guy's movies, I think.
I think, yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Live fact checking.
Yeah. It's fucking handy because I don't trust myself with like anything. Like, it's like, I honestly don't. Like, and then this was a TV show. It was like a 6-part mini-series. I think it translates in, can anyone translate that for me? Buzz Aldrin.
Where did you go in all the chaos?
Yeah, so it's based on a book written by a guy who's from Stavanger, and it was popular when it came out. I had a kind of break where I wasn't really doing anything. I was doing a bit of independent work where I was doing re-edit, like around 2016. I was editing like corporate videos and stuff like that, just to like keep my finger in the post-production game, I guess. But that was like just repackaging corporate videos that people had made and putting them into modern aspect ratios and stuff. But then I started working with you guys, and I was more focused on recording music for things. So I think this is all the things that I've helped work on since I
I
joined.
should say Burn Perfects would be on there also, but I'd already asked my punk band friend for his album to use.
Yeah.
So then Tom was like, "Oh, it's great working on some music," and I was like, "How do I tell him already?" And I was too early in my directorial career to figure out the order of stuff. And
Yeah.
it would be on the list.
But yeah, I think I did just the soundtrack for this one, soundtrack for that one. Searching for Veslamoy. Cool. Yeah, starred in it, made one song. It was more of a tone. It was more of a tone than a song. Oh, I did a live performance. Yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
right. Yeah, when you were interviewing.
Faceboy did the soundtrack, the full score. Mr. Sleepy did the same full score. Third Line Support wrote, directed, filmed, edited, and did the soundtrack for a co-production under Leo's label because he was there every step of the way, recording sound and supervising the script, and yeah.
Yeah, that's fun.
Are all projects with the club?
Yeah. So I think in this room, Ranghill's in Third Line Support. Is that it?
Iliad's gonna be in it, isn't he?
Ilia's gonna be in it, yeah.
Oh, the people in the
Asked you months ago, you said yes, it counts.
The parts that you put on the trailer, nobody's here.
No, no.
There's so many people in it, and none of them are here. Like, there's so
Yeah. Maybe it's a bad sign. What?
Angelo, yeah, you're right.
Oh,
Yeah.
He
He was in it.
That's
What's Bad Luck to a Club Like Ours? Short film. Yeah, we've
Also the star of that one.
just done that. That's going to a festival
Filmed it right here.
this year. Yeah, in this very room.
Yeah.
Cheerophobe, which is I'm really excited about. Everyone's saying that one.
I just saw a bit of it there and I was like, oh, what's that? That looks beautiful. And it was cheerful. I'm so pleased with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like
So you do music also?
yeah.
Okay.
That's the main interest at the minute. But I do enjoy writing more and more, especially collaborating with other people. Like me and Leo are working on a script together at the minute. What I'm not great at is writing an entire script, but what I can do quite well is saying like he has like 3 pages of ideas that I think you should include, and he has like a big chunk of dialogue.
No, he basically told me the
Like,
whole structure because
yeah.
Bad Luck to a Club Like Ours would have expanded into a feature film script, and Tom basically said, "I think this should happen," and I was like, "Okay, I'll do that."
Yeah.
Plus, many scenes that he wrote also.
And then I came with loads of notes. And what was really cool about those notes is when I read Leo's script, he'd woven it into the script really, really well. And and there was loads of bits that I thought like, that's great, that's really cool. And then there was it was an interview with an employee, and I read it and I was like, that's fucking rocks, that. Like, that's really cool that someone's that broken down and saying that to their boss. And when I looked back at my notes, I was like, fucking, I wrote that. Like, so, any questions? So this was more for, I gave this presentation at work to like some IT people who are interested in video editing. So this is like how machine rooms and editing facilities used to work in the period, I would say, before 2009, 2010. So you would have a machine room, which was full of I/O racks. I/O stands for in and out. You'd have a render farm, which is big PCs with lots of CPUs, where now you would have GPUs. Digibeta tape decks and other types of decks. So DVD or recording decks and things like that.
No, is the modern day equivalent of this machine room like a page on DaVinci Resolve?
Kind of, yeah. Pretty much. It's more so I'll quickly run through it.
Yeah.
You'd have raw video, maybe including sound, and then you'd have raw sound material. You would take all of this into the machine room and make a note of what you actually had. You would then downgrade the quality of everything because you couldn't kind of apply effects and do like things like crossfade transitions back then because it would slow down the edit suite so much. You would then put it onto an edit suite. You would then review all of the footage, sync the sound, and you would log which bits of the video you actually wanted to bring in at full quality. Notice the terminology, offline editing and online editing. This had nothing to do with the internet. It was just that people who worked in television at the time just misused IT terminology like freely. So after you'd done that in the edit suite, you would order the rendering. So you would then get it re-rendered at a better quality, slightly better quality. It would then go to an edit suite and someone would do the first cut. Now, it's not what Leo thinks is a first cut of the movie, and it's not what any of you think of a first cut of a movie is. It's literally the visuals and the bass sound, so the sound that you've got available. So no graphical effects, no text, none of that. No music. Like the first cut was just the video. Dialogue, but only what you've got. So we'll come back to that. It would then go to another edit suite where they would start playing around with VFX and color grading digitally, and they would get as close as they could to it. And that was done on what was called an Onyx machine, which was a silicon graphics machine, which was like that's what Terminator 2 was made on. That's what Jurassic Park was made on. It was one of the first computers where you could render 3D graphics on video. And they became a lot cheaper in the late 90s. You would then order a rendering with all of the information and data from the first cut, the VFX and the color grading in full quality. And at this point you would start referring to it as online editing because you were editing at full quality. And that's all that actually meant. Like offline was bad quality, online was good. So it would then go back to the machine room and you would put in all the timestamps. You would put in all the reference codes to the video effects. It would then come down to another edit suite where you would start doing stuff with sound design and ADR. So that was when you would start re-recording bits of voice and stuff like that. And you might have to, if someone's in a church or a cave, you might put a bit of echo or reverb on their voice. But the sound that comes from microphones isn't always what you want it to sound like. So even if it's what the person really sounded like in that room, you might want the room to sound different. You would then add music and mix all the sound together. You would then order the rendering at full quality again. It would then go back into another edit suite, which is when you would add the graphics and the subtitles. So graphics being all the text which is permanently on the film. So the introduction things saying produced by this company, the name of the movie, and the credits at the end, or what would be called hard-coded graphics. The subtitles are then on another layer, but they have to be written and synced to the video. And then you would order a final playout if everyone was happy with it. If they weren't happy with it, you might have to go back to here, or you might have to go back to here. So one of the important parts of my job is when they ordered the rendering and was sent it to there, always keep this one. And when they finish with this and send it to there, always keep this one. And like as a machine room technician, you're ultimately responsible for kind of keeping what were called milestone cuts, like all along this process. That was like a big thing where if you fucked that up, you could get fired, like on the spot. They'd be like, you didn't keep a milestone. No, it's like, you're gone. So now, what does it look like today? So you basically have these two things, and then you can just say, computer, and you can do any of this stuff in any order you want. You certainly don't start off editing in lower quality. If you filmed something in 4K, you edit in 4K and it's not a problem. You do color grading straight away, then you start looking at what bits of footage you actually want to use. You then might do a bit of sound design. You might test out what music looks good on top of this footage. You then might start to think like, should I get some of the voice recording and sync up the dialogue? Yeah, you can just do anything you want in any order. And you don't have to think of what you do first. And you can just click undo to go back.
It's even better now. You can just write with text. I want this.
Yeah. Yeah, soon Microsoft Copilot will just be take over all of this. So the point that I realized that, and so the industry that I worked in is more or less gone. Like the machine rooms are gone, the patch bays, the mixing desks, they're all gone. And quite frankly, good, because I never enjoyed it that much anyway. Like, before it became redundant and kind of archaic way of doing things, I'd already kind of quit. So, good riddance. It's much better now. I wouldn't go back. There was no advantage to having to work like this. It was just a limitation. So, yeah. But yeah, I included this and I included this. And I will finish with this. So I talked about in Soho Images, the machine where they would blend two different effects physically with two different grades of film. And they would take one that looked like that, one that looked like that, and produce this. Like once you could download DaVinci Resolve for free and watch a 2-hour tutorial telling you how to do this. I think I discovered it in Final Cut Pro X before I discovered it in DaVinci, but this is a shot taken from DaVinci because it's what most of us like to use now. But that was when I knew kind of video editing, like at a professional level, was just for the people. It's no longer like something that you have to go to university for. You don't have to do the course I did. You can download a copy of DaVinci Resolve and watch YouTube videos and produce stuff that's good enough. You've got all the tools at your fingertips. It's just to kind of dedicate some time to actually learning how to do it. And I'm still learning now, you know, so it's not like I learned how to do everything. My most recent thing was how to go into extreme slow motion when you haven't shot something and you need to add additional frames and use frame blending. I watched a really cool video like that to get a kind of Bill Viola effect on some of Leo's footage. All you need, you can just type into YouTube, DaVinci Resolve, extreme slow motion, frame blending effects, and you'll find like 5 tutorials. Color grading, even more. There's just, you don't even need to remember the links. Like, I mean, if you scroll through Stavanger Filmmakers Facebook page, people have posted quite a lot of them, but it's all out there for anyone to learn. And that's why when people advise people to go to film school, I'm always kind of like, what exactly for?
Because that's my question. All the education you have, bachelor and master.
Yeah.
How are you using this now? Or was it?
Well, the good thing about a master's degree is you can use it to get other jobs. Like, so if you've got a bachelor's degree, yeah. I mean, like if you've got and that was one of the lucky things that it wasn't like an arts-based degree. So I have a bachelor's of science in media production. And when you look at like down the list of modules I did, it's an IT-based degree. The master's degree, not so much, but it's still a master's degree, which in some industries still counts for something. Although I'm not a great proponent of it.
But knowledge-wise, what are you using now?
Knowledge-wise, not a lot. Not a lot. I think what university is great for is to kind of give you the space to think and learn, and like you kind of you get to play around more and figure out what you wanted to do. So before I did media production, I did a year of law. Like I didn't know what I wanted to do when I went to university, so I picked like what sounded like the hardest, most impressive course you can do, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was like, I'm going to do a law degree, tell everyone I'm going to be a lawyer, just like Ali McBeal. Be fucking awesome. Sorry?
You got connections, that's cool. People to work with.
But yeah, like after a year of doing it, I saw all these people wandering around campus with cameras and stuff and thought that looks more fun. Yeah.
We should have get a coffee so we can talk more to Tom about it. Huge round of applause to Tom.
Cheers, guys.
Okay. Thanks so much.